What's happening there, everybody? Brandon here, coming to you again at the shop. So I've got another video lined up today. This one is going to be of my process of painting this barn down here in this scene. So we're going to have a real-time walkthrough on painting a simple barn here. This is a kind of a background barn, if you will. It's not the ultimate focus of this particular painting. The focus of this painting was the bird in the foreground. So this video is going to be how to quickly put in kind of an old rustic barn there in the background. Not tons of detail on it, so it doesn't take an overly long period of time. But if you want to paint along with me on this one, let's get started. Been working on this scene here that is going to have a Carolina wren in the foreground sitting on a fence post. We're going to have a little bit of a barn here off in the distance, kind of an old weathered barn back there. So we're going to take a look at my process for doing that. I've been doing this blocking in layer initially with this massive 2-inch brush. Now we're going to move over here to this barn. So this segment is going to be brought to you by much smaller brushes. Specifically here I'm using a 1/2-inch angled brush that I'm going to be using here. You can use about anything that's small enough for you to get in here. Flat brush, angled brush, whatever you want to use. I've been mixing some paint here that I've been doing this blocking in layer with, and so I've got just some burnt umber, some medium red, some black on here that we're going to block in this barn with. And with this angled brush, basically we're going to have boards that are going to be on this barn that are going to be vertical. So I'm going to keep vertical brush strokes on the front here as I'm blocking this in, and then I'm going to switch it up for the side. I'm going to do horizontal brush strokes, and then the roof will be just an old rusted out kind of metal roof. So we'll take our brush strokes this direction as we block in that roof. And again, these blocking in layers are my less expensive acrylics here. So these are just some Master's Touch acrylics that I'm using for this blocking in layer. I'll do the detailing out layer of this barn in some of my better acrylics that I've got, some either Professional Series Liquitex or some soft bodied stuff, some golden fluids maybe. We'll see what we get into. But anyway, blocking in layers, I find that the paint is not nearly as, it doesn't matter in terms of which level of paint I'm using for my blocking in layer, because I'm going to mostly be covering that all up. All I'm trying to do is get some color on the canvas to get me headed in the right direction. So with this angled brush here, I'm just going to move into some of that burnt umber and black initially. And you don't have to mix your paint all that well here. You can just kind of glob some of both colors on your brush, tap it in there, and start making some brush strokes. And if the paint is not overly mixed, you will find that you get a variety of color going on when you make these brush strokes. And I very intentionally, when I'm laying in a blocking in layer, I go with much darker tones than what I will be finishing up with, and I put lighter highlights on the top. So this is going to be very dark initially on this blocking in layer. But again, keeping my brush strokes on the front of this barn in a vertical direction will give me the hints of some lines of boards that will be in there on the final step is put in place. I don't have to worry about the bottom of this so much on a clean line, because I'm probably going to put some grasses and stuff in there. So again, I just put my brush into that brown and black. Don't worry about mixing it all that well. And then come in here and start dropping vertical brush strokes in to block this thing in. And I don't know how well it picks it up on camera, but there is a little bit of a variation there of color between the brown and black that you can see some vertical streaks on that will come into play when I'm detailing this barn out, and just add a little bit of something there for my individual boards. we come back in and do our highlight layers, some of this brushstroke and directional stuff that we've done in our blocking in will still kind of peek through. So I like to do it just because I know that later on there'll be some effects there in the finished product that make it worthwhile. Now on this side over here, I'm going to go with the same kind of process. Just to mix it up slightly, I'm going to introduce just a touch of titanium white into this mix. And we're going to go with more horizontal looking brush strokes over here on the side, because that's the direction I'm going to make the boards over here. And again, I'm touching into black and burnt umber and some titanium white. I'm not really mixing it. I'm just kind of globbing it on the brush, so whatever color effects and changes that I get in there are perfectly fine with me. It just adds some little extra details in the end. And again, we're not worried about anything overly specific because this is a blocking in layer. But I am trying to create a few things that will help me out when I'm doing my detailing layers. So now we're going to move to this roof, and here's where I'm going to start putting some red into this mix to make like a burnt, or not a burnt, but a rusty looking effect. So I'm going to keep those same colors of burnt umber and black, and I'm going to drop a little red in here. And we're going to take our brush strokes now down at an angle. And again, I'm just putting this color on the brush, not really mixing it all that well. That way we get a variety of things going on when we drop it on the canvas. Sort of like that. And now we'll probably have an overhang on this top side that will be a little visible in terms of the edge. So I'll create a little bit of a sharp edge over here on this side. And if I'm not going to be dealing overhang, I'm going to come in here just real quick with some black, just some straight black, and darken up. This just kind of gives me a reminder of where I want to go once I start detailing some stuff out. I'm going to put in a little bit of a black along this inside edge, which would be kind of the shadowy overhang of that roof line right there. Now we have the makings of a little bit of a barn going on back there. Now here's the thing, when we start to finish detailing this out, I want to create the illusion still that there's some mist and some fog going on in here. So we're going to be taking our saturations down on these colors a good bit as I detail that thing out to try to make that effect. But that is step one in my process, is blocking that in, and we will revisit it a little later on. Now you can, give yourself the idea that maybe there is a door in here with some black maybe we'll put a door right there in the middle somewhere. And maybe we'll say this area over here off to the side is just kind of a big opening workspace in there as well. Something like that. Alright, so that's going to dry before we do anything else to that. While that's drying, I'm going to get working on some other stuff here. Alright, so I've got an initial block-in layer here done on this barn now. And again, this is a barn that's going in on a scene here that I'm doing that's going to be a Carolina wren sitting on a fence post over here in the foreground. And this is all going to be off in the background with a little bit of foggy atmosphere going on. So when this barn is finished, I may end up glazing over that area and bringing that foggy line a little bit more forward to this area where this grass detail is kind of stopping. But for now, we're going to finish working on this barn in terms of detailing it out before we might do a glaze over it at the end. The blocking in stage again was just basically some vertical brush strokes here and horizontal brush strokes here, and then angled with the roof with brown and black and a little touch of red in there. I'm going to come back now with a this is a 1/4 inch angled brush and do a little bit of detailing out on here. And I guess I'll start on this roof, and I'm using fluid acrylics still here, golden fluid acrylics, just some medium value red and some burnt umber, a touch of titanium white, and we're just going for a rusty look there. So I'm gonna mix in that brown and red color. I'm going to mix in that brown and red color here just to create that rusty look, and we're going to add a little bit of touches of titanium white here and there on it to make it look like this rust is eating through in some places, and maybe this was originally a painted red tin roof or something, who knows. But we're going to streak it basically in that direction. Now I'm going to come in and again add just a hint of this titanium white and more burnt umber. And let's create some small streaks coming down it in a variety of places. Starting along this roof line here. I'm just lightly touching this canvas, dragging the brush down. And I honestly don't know how much I really want to do to the roof. I mean, this is just some kind of old metal roof on this barn, and who knows what it would really look like in terms of the areas that you can see paint coming off, rust forming. I mean, it could be anything. So I'm just adding some touches in here. We'll just go with that. I mean, heck, why not? We'll create maybe a sharper line on this front edge just so we know where the edge of our tin roof is. So with this color, I'm just going to come in here and drag it right down that front edge like that. Maybe even do the same thing along this bottom leading edge, just so we know where the edge of our metal roof is sitting. Now for these pieces of board down the side, I think I want to do mostly burnt umber, touch of titanium white to start out with to create some highlight on the board. And what I'm going to do is create boards that are laying horizontal to the ground. So again, coming in here and streaking the wood that direction. And then we're going to leave some dark spaces in there where these things would be overlapping. To create our desired effect of this is a barn that's going away from us. I'm going to come in here in about the midpoint. It would be kind of at our horizon line, if that's what you wanted to call it, on the barn. And bring that piece of wood pretty much straight across. And then I'll angle the ones that are under it down a little bit. And the ones that are above it, I'll angle them up a little bit, and that'll give us the look that we're trying to go for. Now again, we can put as much detail in here or as little as we want. I'm going to add a little bit of Ivory Black to the mix, just to put some dots of things here and there to make that look like some wood grain going on. When I say dots of things, I mean I'm literally just randomly tapping the canvas here with the end of this angled brush. Probably won't even be able to notice this on camera, but it's just creating a couple of little, you know, who knows what these things are, imperfections in the wood. There's some knots here and there in it, whatever it is. Just something to break up the monotone of the highlight glaze, or the, you know, the highlight that I laid in there. And I'll do the same thing with adding a little bit more titanium white to the mix, just every so slightly touch in, especially here towards the front end. Some of this titanium white. We're just going for old weathered wood look here. And you know, it's got all kinds of things going on, so that's really all we're looking for. Now on the front of this barn, we're going to go with just a slightly different color. I'm going to add just a touch of red to this mix. So we're still working with raw umber, but I'm going to put a little bit more red in it so our wood on the front end has got a little bit of a hint of a reddish tint to it. And we're going to be working with vertical lines this time. Just because I wanted to switch it up a little bit and have the front of the barn have wood going in a different direction. Now obviously our original blocking end layer had brush strokes this direction, which you'll see they come in handy now when you're doing these highlight passes. You'll be able to see some of that original brushstroke line and direction coming through this. Adding just a touch more red into the mix. And you don't have to be very precise with anything here, because again, this is old wood. It's going to be falling apart. It's going to be rotting in places. We're just trying to give the impression, the suggestion, as they say, that there is individual boards going on back here. maybe once upon a year, or even painted with some red on them, who knows. And now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to put in a little bit of black to this mix and drop in some darker things here and there. Some shadows, some cracks in the boards. Who knows what these things are. Something to break it up. These are mostly probably splits and cracks in the wood, I would imagine. And just using real light touch with the end of this angled brush to where you don't get any kind of full coverage. You get little streaks and open spaces and stuff that you're looking for when you're trying to create wood grain, texture, shadows, cracks, splits, all that kind of stuff. So you're not really pressing down hard here to do this. You're just kind of lightly letting that brush touch. Now again, underneath this side over here, we're going to darken things up. Some shadow from our overhanging roof. Up in this top corner on both sides maybe. And I'd like to fade that line down a little bit here so it's not such a drastic change between where my shadow is and where my wood is visible. Something like that. I might darken up a little bit of the area here on this door so that's a little easier to understand that that's an opening right there. Same way with this opening in the back, we're going to darken this up. Just creating more contrast so they can say, yes, that's definitely another opening on the end of our barn here. Alright, now what else do we need to do here? We're going to add a tad bit of titanium white to the mix again. So let's go back into our brown, black, a little bit of red, touch of titanium white, to add some streaks and highlights again on here with a little bit more white. And I want even a little more white than that because it's not enough contrast. Something like that. And just on a few places here, and add some of this. And I might even not carry this across the whole face of this barn. We might just do this in this one side. Maybe whoever built this had to use two different kinds of wood about halfway through the project. Who knows? But keep it interesting. Alright there, so my SD card got full on me there and cut me off in the middle of painting this. So let's just get back into doing this barn. As I was working across here with a little bit of these lighter highlights, we were putting in, again, just some board grain texture here where we introduce a little bit of titanium white into the mix. Now to move over to the other half, I'm adding a little bit of red into this mix just to switch things up a little bit, and make this front of this barn a little more interesting. And so it's not just like the same colors all the way across. Maybe they used, you know, different boards or something to do this, but I'm still using my small 1/4 inch liner, or excuse me, angled brush here, and just touching in very lightly, putting pressure so I don't get any kind of full coverage here on the canvas. Some little marks and lines here to show wood grain texture, some little cracks in the boards or whatever these things might be. And again, we're just giving the appearance of old weathered barn wood here. We don't have to have anything specific. And we're also going to probably come back over this once I'm done with some kind of really thin glaze of this fog color to push this thing back in the distance a little bit more, so it's not quite so saturated with color popping out here, because I want to make it look like it's a little further away. And then down here along the ground, what I did when the camera was off was put in a little sharper line along the bottom, and then brought in just a little bit of a muddy color here coming out from these openings, doors, like on the ground here, just to again make it look like somebody's been walking in and out of these areas right here along the ground. And that is essentially my process here of making an old weathered barn. But I think I want to make the front end just a little more something going on here. We're going to put a couple of maybe some ledges of board that are moving horizontally across here. So while we've got this little highlight color we've been working with, let's put in a line that moves horizontally across right here, and then maybe another one right here on the top of this opening. So we say we've got a board sitting in there, and then maybe they've got a couple of places, maybe there's like a area here from the inside they can open up a window, and oh, I don't know, maybe they tried to put a shelf or something out here on the outside at some point. So there's just a few things in here with that highlight color that just, you know, make it a little more interesting. And I think I also want to make it look like you can halfway see the wood on the inside, so it's not so dark in here. Let's come in here and put the indication, and I'm going to use my finger to kind of fade that out. Let's put the indication of some of these boards here on the inside that you can just make out. It's not quite so dark in there. Maybe do the same thing here along the bottom. We'll kind of fade that out a little bit. There, I think we're in a good place now. So hopefully that gave you an idea of how to create an old rustic looking barn sitting back here. Again, this isn't overly detailed, but it's enough to give us a suggestion of what we're going for. And in this particular painting, since we're doing a much larger scene, it's going to serve the purpose. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. We'll catch you next time. Happy painting, everybody.